Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into ChannelBK. My name
Hi.
is Brian. That is Josh. Rest in
Hello,
peace
everyone.
to the Brockhampton. That's why I'm wearing the shirt. We're here with What's on Repeat. The end of the year. It's another end of the year. Holy moly,
Wow.
Josh. It's like
Yeah.
it's been a while. Like we've just been
12 episodes we've done this show.
it's been a lot. It's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, lots of fun. And we are here to talk about our October through December. There's really not anything from December on our list. We just
Oh,
thought
yeah.
we'd put it out early enough, mainly because I know we're going to be working on our year-end stuff and also for the holidays. And honestly, I don't think my list would have changed really in a few weeks. So, yeah, we're just going to get straight into it because it's the end of the year. So, Josh was so kind to ask me if we can kind of keep it to one single, which I was perfectly okay with because my one single has been a nonstop listen for me for the past couple months that it's been out. And it's on the upcoming new Young Fathers album. Heavy, heavy. The song is I Saw. And this song is easily my favorite single of theirs. In my view, was a song that was my favorite song of 2018. My favorite single. I love that song, but I think in terms of just overall, just single, I've not been this excited for a Young Fathers album since really Shame. This song is bananas. It is heavy, it is dark, it is beautiful. The guys sound hungry on it. Again, a lot of this song, they talked about how this is what the album's gonna feel like. It's gonna be a lot raw. That sounds like I'm saying raw, like more
War.
raw. Yeah, more raw. I guess I should say. More drum heavy. Obviously Geronimo was a single from the summer that I really enjoyed from it, but this one is hard hitting in your face. I love the boom, 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 boom.
Full of coits.
Yeah. And he just the animation of his rapping is just incredible. I think the hook is gorgeous and a
Oh,
beautiful.
yeah.
I
And it
saw
has.
what I saw. Boom, 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 boom. It's so
Oh, yeah.
good.
And I've only heard like the beginning of the song, but I love how like they really highlight like them being like from Scotland, because there's like a big thick accent going on in some of the vocals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want your shield. I want your weapon. Give me that bulletproof vest. And don't forget, I'm not susceptible to your nonsense. Oh, winner.
Yeah.
It's just, it has, and like the breakdown at the end is great. It's, the music video is fantastic for it. And when this single came out, like when I knew we
And
were
even
getting,
Anthony loved it too.
yeah, like I know Geronimo was a little bit quieter and it was a bit of a different, it kind of felt like Lord in a bit, because Lord in a way, I should say, because that song I think is fantastic, but as a single, it's kind of like you don't get that kind of feeling. I think Geronimo was a lot better,
Yeah, and
but
spoiler, one of the albums on my list, the first single from it is kind of has a similar effect.
yeah, like so this one coming out was so much more aggressive, and it was like their live show is one of the best live shows I've ever seen, period. So when I heard this song, I'm like, oh my gosh, y'all need to come close to Michigan because I will be seeing you live to see this performed. It's fantastic. Can't wait for February. Lots of stuff coming out. This is one
Oh,
of
yeah.
those.
My first single is also from a new album coming out in February next year. And similar to how you're excited about the return of Young Fathers, and of course I am too, because I really liked their last album. I'm very excited about the return of one of my favorite post-punk bands out of the UK right now, Shame, with Fingers of Steel. So their last album, Drunk Tank Pink, I think really offered some of last year's best post-punk, and in a year that was very much full of post-punk because you had Black Country New Road and Squid and all that. I would say they're like one of the bands in this scene right now that isn't like trying to do anything experimental or like weird like some of those other bands. they're kind of playing post-punk pretty straightforward, but they're doing it with such great performances and production and songwriting. Like and like that album was produced by James Ford, who's like done stuff for like Arctic Monkeys and Jessie Ware, like a bunch of like UK kind of artists. Um, but it seems they're trying to expand their sound a little coming off of this song because there's more piano in here and they're kind of going for this grander, more kind of haunting song. Like it seems the direction they seem to be going in with this new record, which is called Food for Worms and comes out February 24th, I think. Um, yeah, it seems they're kind of this new direction kind of reminds me of like the last Ice Age album, which I know was like your fave from last year.
Okay.
Where it's kind of that dark post-punk sound, but it's also kind of anthemic in a way, and it sounds like the sort of thing, yeah, that you could play. So, sounds like the sort of thing you could play at a bar or something like that. Like which a lot of their songs actually do have that vibe, but it seems like they're kind of going in a kind of direction similar to that of like the Black Country Road album from last year. But spoiler, both of us have that album in our top 10 this year. One of
Yes.
the best of the year. We're here deserves all the praise it got. And I think the impact of the song is only intensified like watching the music video as well, which definitely is a very cool music video and how it reflects on like social media addiction, and it like depicts the members of the band essentially basically looking stuff that people have said about them like on social media, and like they noticed like one of their old music videos going viral. Like it's yeah, it's pretty wild and trippy. And this new record is probably my most anticipated album of the year so far, and in a month that's also given us like Young Fathers, like you said, Algiers,
Paramore.
Paramore, and meh Gorillas. I'm definitely very interested to hear what this band accomplishes on their new album. I don't know if it's going to be better than Drunk Tank Pink or not, but we'll see. But for now, I really like this song, and that's why I'm talking about it here.
I'm gonna go have to listen to it after we shoot because your Ice Age thing has intrigued me. So I'm interested.
Oh yeah.
So, what are the final three albums you and I are listening the rest of this year, the year of our Lord 2022?
Oh yeah. Well, I will say the whole reason we're only doing one single is because unlike the last two episodes, we actually have opinions on all six of the albums on
That's
our
true.
lists. So I kind of wanted to have more time to really discuss the albums. First time we've really been able to do this since like the January March episode.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited. Well, I know that my first album is one we definitely both agree on. The other two we kind of tend to have our own takes on, but we'll get to that. But speaking of bands from the UK, uh, I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room. That is the 1975 and their late.
Caroline. Boom, 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 boom. Want to get it right this time. Sorry,
Oh
I just
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
that song is so damn good.
Oh
Ah,
yeah. Obviously, being funny in a foreign language is the
and then
name of the album.
their
Uh,
fucking album titles, man.
oh man, like that album title, that's like it kind of makes the titles of their last two albums seem kind of normal. Although obviously the most insane one is the whole "I Like It When You Sleep" yada 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 album title that was
Yep,
their
that's the rest of the. It's I like it when you sleep, yada yada yada. That's
um so I'm a little shocked that I have this album on my list and you don't have it on yours because because I have a feeling. See if you can guess which one of us has had a more weird relationship with the band. This guy.
That's right.
Um, um, because yeah, I do remember vividly like our very first Zoom call we ever did. I had just like tweeted, that I wasn't into their last album. Um, I will make one thing clear though. I didn't think it was garbage or anything. And I definitely understand why people like Brian defend it, but my whole problem with the album and kind of my problem with this band in general over the years is they don't quite have a sound, and like they sure do have a lot of ambition, and I do think songwriting wise they are definitely pretty unique, but they don't exactly put a unique spin on a lot of the sounds they're doing. They're a very derivative band, and also they really struggled in terms of like putting an album together, like sequencing it. Because like their
Yeah.
last album was just, it was so overstuffed. Like it was essentially the Donda of 2020 was that
Online relationships is definitely, up until this album, their most focused record, because even their first two records were kind of overlong and it would go into
and I haven't
territory.
even listened to those two albums
Oh,
because back when they first emerged, I kind of wrote them off as just another kind of pop rock boy band that was obviously obsessed with the 80s. And then I got on them with their 2018 album, which is where they kind of started to experiment and try to go on their own. And like,
mhm.
yeah, and it kind of went from being kind of genius to just being a little exhausting, like, because their last album was crazy and all over the place. But I'm happy to say, compared to their last album, this new record is tight.
It is.
They are
Yes.
giving us just 11 songs and 43 minutes, and when you have an album that tight, you got to show up, and they definitely do show up on this record. Happiness, that song is such a jam. I love the groove, the instrumentation on it. It's great, and the whole "Show me your love, why don't you bow down and show me your love," like it's so catchy,
The
and
saxophone solo is great.
also like "I'm in Love with You," which I've had stuck in my head of quite a while. I mean, it's not like my most played song on here, but like, yeah, that chorus is just like, "I'm in love with you.
Mm, mm, mm,
Oh
mm.
yeah, it's like it's not like a super deep song, but yet it doesn't need to be because it's just they do that vibe so well. And Looking for Somebody to Love really should have been a single from this album, in my opinion, because how does this balance work? The song is so like catchy and upbeat, the way it's like bow 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 bow, looking for somebody to love. But then like the lyrics on it are like super dark and
It's like pumped up kicks.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
the
and
that was the kind of comparison I made in my head, because when I finally learned what
oh
the, like,
yeah,
when you read the lyrics, you're like, yeah, this kind of is pumped up kicks. It's this happy, fun song, and then you're like, oh, this is kind of about
School
killing
Shooter
people. Yeah,
is
school
the
shooter, and yeah, it's very much like, ooh, and it's like you said, it's the juxtaposition, right?
and
Like,
it's my favorite song on the album, and it's actually my third most played song on Spotify this year. So clearly, I think it's the shit.
yeah, it's pretty
Now,
great.
but I think now we have to talk about the biggest hot topic song from this entire album, Part of the Band. I I don't think it was necessarily like, I mean, I definitely would not have chosen that
As a
as
single,
the first
I
single,
agree.
but I oddly really like love that song. It's just like it's so over the top and like maybe even a little corny, but yet it's kind of charming, like listening to him say stuff like, "Yeah, I met a vaccinista, tote bag chic barista, sitting east on their communista keisters." Like,
See,
I'm a
you know what I'll say? I think besides the intro, which the intros are always like very different and they put into perspective what the album is. You brought up a lot where like they're grand or they're simple. I think this album, most of the songs aren't like just simple, but they definitely are like tight in their own ways. This is the only song on the album that feels like something they've done before, where like this song would be packed. This song I feel like could have been on the last album because it just sort of transitions to this song, but then the rest of the album goes back to that really well produced like sound. So I agree with you. I don't hugely dislike the song because I still think a lot of what it's doing, like you were saying, I think there's some unique stuff that works
oh,
a
and
lot.
I love the strings, the way they're like boop, boop, boop,
Yeah. I think the strings are really beautiful and that, like you
like
said, they're colorful and playful. I agree. It shouldn't have been the lead single. And it feels like an odd song on this album. Because even About You, which I know you and I have already said it's overproduced. It's probably the worst song on the album. It's definitely like the
not because the
lowest.
song is bad or
It's just,
anything.
yeah, because it could be a good song. It's just the way it's produced. Part of the band is probably my least favorite, but not because I think it's terrible. I think it just seems out of place for me because this album feels like it's the 1975, but it also feels like their most like simple, straightforward record. And I think it works. And like, because the first two records, the writing, like you said, it's like Maddie Healy is a very particular kind of person where you're either going to be like, dude, you are so cringy, or you're going to
Like
be like,
a heartthrob.
oh my God, you're so deep. And I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of on both sides. I think he's gotten a lot better. Like, I think he's definitely in the like, wow, he's actually really interesting as a songwriter. But there are those times where you're kind of like, dude, shut up. You're so pretentious. But I think now, unlike earlier in their career, there's less of that. So I can ignore that because everything else is good. And I think he's really progressed. And I think his lyrics are a lot smarter. I think he's a lot more introspective and like interesting versus before he was like saying very basic stuff that people were like, like fucking Tumblr girls were like, oh my God, Maddie's so deep.
Oh yeah,
But it's like, no.
but yeah, it's so funny. Like, yeah, like back to Part of the Band, and it's just kind of odd the way the string passages, they go into like those like acoustic parts, and then the end is kind of dreamy and everything. But yeah, I actually would put that song in my top three from this album. So how you like that, haters? But
Jeez.
but yeah, but like the first half of the record seems to have more of like the bops on it, but then the second half is where they take things in a more low key, kind of introspective direction. Like All I Need to Hear is beautiful. Like, yeah, I love the vibe of that song. And like even like Human 2, which has such a smooth performance from Matt, the way he's like, you know that I'm a human too. Like, yeah, it's lovely, and sadly the following track takes things in a kind of funky direction because like the same song that has like beautiful contributions from Carly Holt has that whole that's just like mixed so loud that it engulfs the entire mix. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think it's that song's probably the most overrated on the album because I've heard some people say it's the best on here. No, no. Um, um, but I think the finale is really strong, and yeah, that's pretty much this album in a nutshell. In like in a really odd way. I mean, 1975 albums usually have like two or three clunkers on them. This album really only has one clunker on it for me. And like even the first song, which I mean, call it an LCDC sound system knockoff all you want. It's actually it does a good job sort of bringing you into the album, and album, and I think it's very smartly written, and yeah, it's, dare I say it, it may even, out of all these like opening the 1975 tracks, this may be my favorite probably. But, but yeah, but there you have it. I love this album. Definitely didn't expect I'd be this high on it.
It's
Um,
funny, you were bringing up before you brought it up how, hey, it's shocking that you didn't have this on your list. When you brought it up, I was like, oh my gosh, shit. I felt so bad. But then when you had it, I was like, you know what, that's fine, because then we could talk about it, because I feel like for you, like you said, it's more cathartic coming from you. Because me, I've been like, yeah, I love the 1975. They're great. This sounds great. You're like, yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but this album though. So it was more interesting.
oh yeah. Well, now on to my next record, which out of all our albums, besides one of Brian's albums, I think is probably the most underground pick on our entire list. Special interest, Endure.
Mhm.
Um, this band, like for people like you, this is like the first time listening to them. Well, for me, I actually learned about them in 2020 off their last record, The Passion of, which I didn't necessarily love, but I thought it had a really cool, interesting blend of like punk music and industrial and electronic music. I mean, they often get categorized as like synth punk and no wave. I definitely agree with those sort of uh with that sort of take. Um and in a weird way, I didn't really think a lot about that album nor that band for much of 2021. So partly because I thought it was cool, but it didn't really stick with me. But also because like yeah, for whatever reason, yeah, I just hadn't really thought about them a lot. Um, and I didn't even know they had a new record this year until seeing NPR Music listed as a notable release for November. Uh, so I was like, oh yeah, I remember this band. I'll give it a listen. And holy shit, my guy, this album is awesome. Like, it is so, like, it essentially takes what they did on that last album and basically just turns it up to 11 on all fronts. Like, I think the songwriting has matured really well on here, and I do think production wise, yeah, they're getting a little more technical and detailed with everything. From like the bass mixes to like those sort of like noisy kind of like whirring guitars, and also like the beats on this record, like the low end, and just the way all the electronics are like brought in is just like so well done. And then on top of that, we have Ollie Logout, who's just like, as a vocalist, yeah, she can go from like just kind of like sassy, and then at other times like kind of more like sweeter, like a Midnight Legend. But then like we have like moments on here like Herman's House, or like Concerning Peace, which is easily one of the most insane bangers I've heard all year, where she's just flat out just kind of like just screaming in a way, yeah, and kind of like violence and stuff like that. This record, in a way, it's kind of like, in my opinion, what a lot of people thought the Soul Glow record was. That record, this record does that for me. So yeah, in a way it's like that record, but in a way that's just a little more my speed. And 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 also I really like some of how they mix it up with some eerier, kind of more low key cuts on here, like Kurdish Radio, which just has, yeah, those kind of like haunting vocals on there. And I would say maybe, the one track on here that like didn't totally do it for me was My Displeasure. I just feel like that song did not need to be 5 minutes, especially considering, I mean, it starts out really cool, like for the first couple of minutes, but then it has that, but then there's that refrain on there that I think is just okay, and they kind of repeat a lot of the same lyrics for like the rest of the song, and yeah, it's the one moment where they're just kind of overstaying their welcome a little bit, which is funny because the other long-winded song on here, the closer, LA Blues, that song is like 8 whole minutes, but yet like they like get quite a bit of mileage off of that runtime because like the groove on it's great, and also like all the different like switch ups, like there's some like really colorful vocal leads, and also like the second half we get things like kind of like these like layers of noise getting like caked on there, and like some kind of like jazzy pianos. So in a way, they're kind of, this is the one song where they're kind of bringing in some of their like Louisiana kind of like heritage into there, and it's like really cool. And yeah, I just think yeah, I definitely like, yeah, they used to be a band that I was like very curious about, but like but now after hearing this record, I'm legit, yeah, a pretty big fan of this group. I mean, I wasn't surprised that it wasn't really your thing. Um but because, and I didn't really expect it to be, because yeah, it's because they're definitely, the way they do this sound is like it's pretty out there, and like even by like aggressive music standards, like this year, the like this is some pretty unhinged, dirty sounding stuff, but like, but in a way it's like it's kind of cathartic for me to listen to music like this. I mean, I kind of enjoy this album for the same reason I enjoy like artists like Backwash or something like that, where it's like it's full of rage and it's pulling from like kind of heavy rock music, but also like hip hop and industrial and stuff like that. And it's like it's creating this like sound that's like it's like it's like not like easy listening really, but yet it's kind of like, but sometimes yeah, you kind of need music like that where
Hmm.
because there's room, because there's room for there's plenty of room for rage in music too, and that's why I really dug this record so much. But now those two got me a little bit hype, but I think we're going to get a little more chill with this last one, even though I think it may be my number one rap album of the year. Smino, Love for Rent. Um, Now, when I say this is like my number one rap album of the year, I'm kind of using that term very loosely because, I mean, if we're talking about like rap, just like full on mind bending rap, I think that would have to go to an album you and I both love, Ethiops by Billy Woods. Um, but but like this record, if we're talking about rap generally, I really like how this guy seems to blend together. There's like elements of neo soul and R&B and pop. Like it's got like, it reminds me of like Anderson Paak does a lot of these kind of blends on his stuff too. I mean, obviously Smino sounds nothing like what Anderson does, but yeah, it's similar kind of blends of sounds. And I'm really shocked that I love this album as much as I do, because it didn't click with me the first time I heard it. And I can understand why you were kind of like, it's okay, because it's definitely an album that, yeah, like requires a little bit of time to marinate in terms of uh I'm but he actually has a lot of very like thoughtful songwriting on this album. But it also like doesn't take itself too seriously. Like it's a record where even in its most introspective moments, uh, you could like just throw it on like at a family barbecue or something like that, like in the background. Like 90 Proof has just like such a great vibe to it, and like J. Cole actually kind of snapped on that song. I
I'm
was shocked.
so I was gonna bring this up because with the special interest record, my opinions were very just like whatever. Like I didn't this record is kind of the same, but I was whenever a feature came on, my ears perked up because
Wow.
Smino, like nothing seemed to really click with me. Like and here's the thing. When I listened to this and special interest, I was doing the same thing. Like I wasn't doing like I was doing some stuff at the house. So I feel like it wasn't the fact that it was like chill that was the issue. It never, even the production to me, like there was not a lot about it that I was taken away from it being like, this is interesting or sounds whatever. I will agree with you though. I'm not the biggest J. Cole guy. J. Cole came on and I was like, oh, what?
Whoa.
I literally just was like, because I remember he was on it, but I didn't know what song. So like, I'm kind of sitting there the whole time, like, okay, this is fine. And then he started rapping and I was like, what? Whoa, 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 whoa. What is happening? I was
Oh
like,
yeah, I
I
know.
like got out of my chair. I was like, okay, he's like going off right now. Okay. I
Oh
agree.
yeah.
J. Cole
Oh
went
yeah.
off.
And also like I kind of feel a similar way about Little Uzi Vert on the song Pudgy, which I love that song. It's so fun, like and it's so catchy the way it's like who in the truck with the pretty guys, yeah, and then like Uzi, weirdly enough, like Anthony said in his review of this record, like Uzi like clearly paid attention to what the rest of the song was doing. It was like, okay, I'm gonna do my own thing, but yeah, I'm actually gonna have like chemistry with
Mm-hmm.
like whoever artist I'm on. Pro Freak, I really liked a lot as well. I mean, I love the bounciness of it, and Dochi killed it with her feature, and also like Smino's verse on the second half of the song, I think is probably his best on the entire record, which I would say Smino, I'd say it's very versatile in terms of like his different delivery styles and flows. I mean, he does like rap, but he also is like doing all these like interesting kind of colorful like melodic flows. Like Matinee, for example, he sounds like three different vocalists on that song because like in some parts like he's like it's the at your creator home, and also he's like St. Louis to Shanghai, St. Louis shop, get loose, we cool stuff, baby. Which I know that part may have a bit of like pitch shifting on it, but like either way, like yeah, I thought the vibe of that song was cool. Settle down, the way it's like settle down, settle down, and then like I think the last two songs finish things off on like a very touching note. Like current, sorry, Curtains has like some of the most like vulnerable lyrics he's written on it, and I love the little spoken word part at the end. And
Isn't there like voicemails on the album
yeah,
too?
yeah,
Like from
there's
like
like
his
four.
uncle or something like that? I'm
Oh,
trying to remember right now.
oh, there are definitely moments on the record where there are voicemails, but I don't know where they're coming from. I haven't done like a lot of research beyond like
Okay.
some of the reviews I've watched. I, but like, and I also think it's cool how the intro track, you hear that same track again, like near the end of the record, and it's this cool like circular effect because you first hear it and you're like, oh, really? What? And then like once you've like digested the full record, it kind of makes sense, yeah, that it's a very beautiful moment on it, and he's like, hey, my little cousin gonna sing this next song, like
Yeah.
and and then like the last song like has some of his most soulful singing on the entire LP, and yeah, it finishes off the album strong. And yeah, I really dug the vibe of this album. I mean, even production wise, it's yeah, it's some of the more unique and like textured production I've heard from like a mainstream rap record this year. So while it may not have like the lyrical density or anything, or like the big like epic sounding beats of like the Billy Woods album, the first one he dropped this year, not the very just mid one he put out later this year, or like the Conway the Machine record, which is probably my number 3 rap album of the year. But still, like as an overall vibe, like it's definitely very replayable. I definitely went back to this album a lot. So yeah, I love it.
I love it. Very good. That's good. That's awesome. So yeah, so my 3 records, none of them are really surprises, I don't think. I mean, like, obviously, as like a universal thing for this channel, you know, it's not just like a common knowledge thing, but I don't think any of these records are a surprise to me. I mean, I guess the second one, because of what I don't like, the one genre of music I can't get into, but we'll get into that after this one, because right now we're going to get into one of the most violent, disgusting sounding groups that is out right now, and that is New York's Show Me the Body. The album is Trouble the Water. I think like a lot of people probably got into them with Dog Whistle, which came out 3 years ago, and it was a aggressive, straight to the point, quick album. I think the riffs were great. The way the vocal approach was there was awesome. And I was always really excited. Like, okay, this could be a group that goes a lot of really cool places, experimental places. Which I think Trouble the Water is. I think Trouble the Water is their most like unique album. Like it's very much.
There's even elements of it that remind me of Black Midi's Cavalcade, like the slower, like more just kind of haunting moments, like out of place. Like I got a real Diamond Stuff vibe from it. It is really cool.
I was gonna say that this album feels like the songs are given more time. There's more time and length to the songs, and then like you said, songs like Out of Place and World War IV are synthy or like acoustic-y tracks where it's. I remember like when I was messaging you about my opinions on the album, when those songs were playing, I was kind of like, oh, okay, so we're gonna get these kind of tracks. And I think they pulled them off pretty well. Like it was a nice break to the album too, because the track listing is very good with that. I think there's a really good flow to the album. Something like Loose Talk, which opens the album in that. Oh, it's haunting. It's menacing. You know you're ready for some shit to go fucking crazy. It is the perfect. I could see this being their opener on tour, where everyone's like, the pit is opening and they're all circling around and they're getting ready. It is crazy. I think Radiator is one of the wildest songs they've done. It's so like, it's out there and obnoxious, but like in a good way. Like it doesn't come across as annoying. We Came to Play, which was another single that they came out with. I love the aggression on here. Boils Up. I was just listening to it again today, and just the like that is real, like screamy screamo approach to that song.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Like this song has kind of a middle ground, because like, you know, when songs are aggressive, they're aggressive.
Yeah.
When they're slower and moodier, they're slower and moodier. This song is kind of somewhere in the middle, and it's like everything suppressed, what's up? Like yeah. I nailed that impression pretty well.
And then like a song like Using It, that song is so catchy, and it's just so funny to me. Like a band like this like can put out an album, and it's, again, like you said, like it's catchy, and you're just thinking about it, and like this kind of music's not supposed to be catchy. It's supposed to just be visceral and ugly, and like you're not supposed to be It's not supposed to be beautiful. But it works. Like it, and I don't know, because I think when you listen to Dog Whistle again, you always think like, where do you go from here? Do you just kind of do the same thing again? And yeah, they extended the songs, they did more quiet cuts. I think even the experimental songs on here where they add a lot of these synthesizers and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's probably the biggest left turn they took on here, because yeah, their last two albums, no synths. This
No.
record, more than half the songs have synth
Yeah.
brought in some way, and also like Anthony's review is easily one of the biggest yikes I've seen from him this year. Like I didn't even expect he would be like that lukewarm on it. I mean, Anthony, I love you, do your thing, but I'm not so sure I vibe with your whole like, oh, they're losing their uniqueness, because I personally think a lot of that is still pretty intact
Yeah.
on this record, and hot take, I think it may actually be their best album. Like,
well, like bands like this too. You were talking about Algiers earlier, and
yeah.
Algiers, obviously, they're not the same group. I know, but they're kind of the same when it comes to like they add some of those hip hop elements. They can get really loud. They can get really beautiful. They can be melodic. Like that's kind of how I see it too, where like this group does the same thing, but it's more post-punk and like punk and like hardcore. Whereas obviously Algiers is hardcore, but it's in like, you know, it's a different kind. It's more like R&B. There's like some like more of that element to a lot of their music, whereas this is more loud and in your face. I think it all works well.
Oh yeah, and Algiers, they're like hardcore kind of in terms of like, you know, the politics in their music. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, this album's great. Check it out.
Yeah, and it's like, I will say, I didn't really love Dog Whistle as much as you, even though I thought it was cool. But yeah, I thought they had the potential to make something great, and yeah, and guess what? They did that with this new record.
They did. And a band that I never knew had the potential of making it so high up on my lists this year. A group that I remember hearing their last record, and I was like, this is good. I like this. And then, shit, they just said, fuck that, Brian. We're about to come for your neck. And that is Palomino by First Aid Kit.
Yes.
Again, this is not a band that I just didn't like and then I like now. Like Ruins, I thought was a great album. I really liked it. That album was very Americana. I liked what they were doing on there. But I heard Out of My Head. I'm like, fucking A. Like that genuinely since The Lightning, and maybe I saw, that is like one of the only songs this year where the moment I heard it, I just got this adrenaline kick. Like when it's the like that's how I felt when in The Lightning, when it transitions into part 2. Yeah, like it's the same, like I just get hit with this like excitement. It's so fantastic. So I heard this song and all I thought was, okay, I don't dislike First Aid Kit, but if the rest of this album is just as good as this song, I'm ready. Now, do I think this album's that great? I do. Do I think it's as good as what this first song was? No. I think this it's the opening to the album. It hits you in there. Not to say the rest of the album is a slouch though, but this song is definitely the most like exciting on here. Angel, which was another song released, I love the way they're singing in the hook, and they're like, you know, compassion, and then they're like, give me some passion, I love you even though you don't love me.
Oh yeah, and
it's so good.
And those trumpets near the end, like,
yeah,
mwah.
like their vocal lines are so fantastic on this album. It is so good. Wild Horses 2, one of the most gorgeous songs I've heard all year. It is so beautiful. So beautiful. I think this album is just, we had a conversation about, whenever we do this show, one of the big things we talk about is this band is experimental. This band does what it does. This band, it's not like you're going into a First Aid Kit album being like, oh, well, what interesting thing. No, it's not. They don't do that. Every song on here is so tightly produced, so well written. The vocal lines, like, I'm telling you, dude, I don't know if I just didn't really feel this way on their last album, or if this album was just how they put it together was so much better, because again, their vocal lines on here are like, it's like heavenly. It's heavenly how well they sound on here. And again, nothing on here is like this groundbreaking country Americana song structure or anything. The album isn't like super long. Every song is like a nice length. It just flows, and each song is just so well put together in their imagery and the way their song, like, it's so clever and so like, holy shit, it is beautiful. It's
Oh my
beautiful.
God, yeah, I pretty much have nothing new to add. I mean, literally everything you just said, I agree with, because yes, this album, is spoiler both in our top tens this year, and I will say this, it's a little bit higher on mine because like yeah, this album kind of gives me a similar feeling I got like off the new Maggie Rogers album, which
Okay.
spoiler is my album of the year. That's definitely a lock. But yeah, yeah, I will say some of the instrumentation and like elements of baroque pop and country, like it even kind of reminds me of like Wise Blood at times with some of the arrangements. I mean, obviously, Wise Blood does this in a way that's a little more ambitious and like
Mm-hmm.
technical for sure. And but I definitely really enjoyed this record. I mean, I was listening to it a couple of days ago just to kind of remind myself of things I wanted to highlight about it. And yeah, yeah, I love every song. There was not a single song on here that yeah, I was kind of like, that was okay. I mean, if I had to really pick one, maybe Fallen Snow, but like even that song
Mm-hmm.
is still like the fiddles on it are great, and I love the bass line, the dome down do dome 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 down down do do. And then there's also a feeling that never came is definitely another one of my absolute favorite tracks on here. I mean, just the strings. Like, yeah, it's
I'm a big fan of 29 Palms Highway, that song. Before the
oh
self-titled track, that song is fantastic.
yeah, yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I would have never thought to blend it blends it blends like synths with auto harp with strings like so beautifully.
Yeah. Yes. So now, final album is in a weird way probably one of my more anticipated albums I've got to talk about, because it's been over 4 years since I've gotten to hear anything from this band. A little indie pop rock outfit known as Young E Giant. Obviously they made it out on the scene a while ago. I know they performed at the VMAs with My Body. Cough Syrup is like their big single. Debut album, I like the singles. I'm not a fan of the album overall. I feel like they had a lot of potential. Their second album was definitely, there was a lot of highlights, but it was mostly very just flat.
I mean, I'd only heard a little bit of it, but it definitely sounded like the sort of thing like, oh, fueled by ramen, definitely were forcing them to make a more watered down album.
Yeah, because Home of the Strange is fantastic. It's the most creative album they've done. Lyrically, it's great. I love the story telling on it. It goes all over the place with their sonics. And then Mirror Master, which is definitely the more accessible version of that album, but there's still some great stuff on there. And I've always been a big fan of Samir as a vocalist, and You know, they're a band that I think their songwriting is unique. I think sonically that you could kind of lump them into a lot of that indie pop rock, but I think their sonics
they're a the blank band, kind of like Foster the People, Walk the Moon, Portugal the Man, and like that. Well, the thing that a lot of these bands have in common is they were like part of the whole indie pop boom of like the early 2010s. God, I feel old talking about this.
I will say though, out of all those bands, I think Young the Giant have definitely stood the test of time because
Totally.
these last 3 albums have been some of their best. Now I know this album was kind of what Beach House did. They put it out in 4 parts. They put it out in 4 like little EPs, a 4-act structure, which I'll be honest, made me a little nervous. I mean, they were gone.
Yeah. I never liked that whole marketing strategy. Yeah. I mean, I will, and believe it or not, one other album that was kind of like this year was the new Orville Peck record that was actually released in like 3 different parts. Yeah, which by the way, Brian and I are fans of that record.
I didn't actually know that. That's interesting because I was trying to think of other bands that did that. I don't know. Maybe that's just a new age, maybe like COVID strategy thing. I don't know.
Hayley Williams did it with her 2020 album, which I don't think this is necessarily the artist's fault. This is kind of a weird strategy. It's just more labels and the music industry being a little weird with rollout techniques.
I will say I am glad I waited I listened to Act 1 when it first came out, and then I didn't really listen to anything until I'm like, I want the album to come out. But it was 16 songs. I'm like, okay. I think Young the Giant can have a lot of possibilities to kind of fall apart. And I'll say this. There are some duds, but I will say from song 1 to song 8, this album is nearly flawless. It is an incredible run. I love the opening with American Bollywood. I really like how one of the things I thought about with this album is like I thought of Band of the Woods, where like you get this artist who makes like a certain kind of music and then they make an album title or an album sound and you're like, oh, they're gonna put influences of that. This album never came across as like bad to me that they were putting in some of that cultural stuff because it never felt overdone and it didn't necessarily feel like it was put together in a bad way. Like Man of the Woods was so like, oh my gosh, you're gonna put this pop.
I didn't listen to that album. I made sure to avoid it from all the backlash I heard to that.
But I think a lot of what this album does well is from a perspective and from a lyrical perspective. It reminds me a lot of Home of the Strange. American Bollywood has this gorgeous intro. It's a big bombastic intro. Then we get to Wake Up, which is the big single on this album. Young the Giant know how to do singles, and this song, Wake Up, Wake Up, wait, it's so catchy. I love the guitar solo near the second half. It's fantastic. Tomorrow is gorgeous. Just trying to find my way back from tomorrow. It's great. Guardian Angel's fantastic. My Way is another gorgeous song. I love the bells on here. Insomnia is great. The Walk Home, I think, is great. When we get to Act 3, Dollar Store, I appreciate it from a perspective and from the experimentation. It just fell flat for me. It really doesn't pick back up to Dancing in the Rain, which honestly, people may think this is a very generic, corny song because it sounds like, did you ever listen to Head Full of Dreams? The Coldplay album?
I've never listened to that album.
Okay, because what it reminded me, this song reminded me of the opening track to it, where it's like these really big anthemic drums, but it works for me. I don't know. I must be a sucker for it. And then like Other Side is fantastic. Same Folk, I think, is a great way to end the album. Again, I'm glad I didn't listen to this album like in pieces when it came out because I would have been so disappointed with the last 2 acts. Not because it's all bad. I think as a full album, the first half is fantastic. I think the second half is honestly good to pretty good. I do think the second half is kind of like this. It's like okay, okay. Like it kind of is like it's like up and down.
Oh, and
Like,
I will say, believe it or not, I never listened to a full Young the Giant album until this project. And if you hadn't like brought it up, I probably would have never gotten around to it. I mean, I definitely knew about them and yeah, was aware and everything, but they just kind of seem like a band that wouldn't really be my thing.
mhm.
Because like some of those bands I mentioned, yeah, they usually, I mean, like Foster the People, for example, they've got a couple of bops.
Yes.
Pumped Up Kicks, which we mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
bop. Don't Stop, bop. Um, but much of their other songs, they kind of overdo it with the production a little bit. It can be a little bit annoying at times. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, especially like on yeah, their second record, they did too much. Like they did way too much on that album compared to like their debut when they first broke out on the scene.
Yeah.
But I actually, for the most part, really liked this album. I mean, I don't love it, but it's like they're arguably like a more interesting version of like that kind of band because like the songwriting's good, the production for the most part's actually really good too, and
That's the one thing about Young the Giant I was gonna say is even though they can fall into a bit of like a poppy trap, I always feel like for the most part they never like they always sound like a band. Like it never feels like it's a auto like a produced song with a like it always feels like they're still a band, even though there are times where it's like Dollar Store, for example, kind of has that. It's never like feels like the full project feels very overproduced. It's like it still sounds like a group. It's just they add these different layers to their stuff. And yes, I agree because some of their songs can be like that, but they don't fully dive into that.
oh yeah, and there's actually like there's genuinely beautiful kind of heartfelt moments on here, and also like they actually like the Bollywood and like the Indian music elements they bring in here.
Mhm.
They actually feel because they actually feel pretty authentic because
And tasteful too.
like because like aren't some of their members like immigrants or something? I don't
The
know.
main singer,
Yeah.
Samir, yeah, so the album is because Home of the Strange was about immigration, and this album was his like perspective growing up and like his family moving here because his family actually he was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Wow.
A little home state, little action there. So yeah, so that comes a lot from Samir. And no, I agree with you. Again, it's like it doesn't come across as like goofy. They're still an indie pop rock band, but it's very like you said, it feels authentic. It feels like respectful, and it's a nice touch. It doesn't feel like weird and obnoxious. Like it feels like it adds like a fun little layer to what the storytelling is.
Yeah. But
Um,
yeah, that I yeah, I think that about does it for our last what's on repeat of the year.
I agree. I was really happy because I remember when I messaged you and I listened to your record, you're like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this Young the Giant then since you and I was like, oh, he's gonna listen to it. So I was excited and I was nervous, and you were like, yeah, it's fine. Like I actually don't think it was that bad. And I was like, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Oh yeah, it's similar to how like, I yeah, it's similar to like me messaging you when I listened to like the Flume record or something like that.
Yeah. Um, I think it's a pretty solid ending to the year. We've had a long year. A lot of exciting albums have come out. I think this year has been really well done. Like I said, this is coming out earlier because, obviously we are putting together our lists and getting our videos ready over these next couple weeks. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting time, and we're really hopeful that you can check all those videos out as well too. But you know the drill. You gotta like, you better comment, and you should subscribe. And you should do the same thing to Mr. Joshua Kirk's channel as well, per
Oh yeah,
usual.
and check out the more underground picks because like other than Mike the Snare and Spectrum Pulse, I haven't heard too many people talk about the special interest record. Um yeah. But yeah,
Yeah. So check out all of those picks. Again, you could check out what we've thought about other albums this year. And yeah, and then you can see what we think is some of the best stuff this year later, because we're gonna have our lists. So again, thank you so much for another year of What's on Repeat. It's been awesome. It's been real. Thank you once again, Josh, for the brotherhood that we've had for 2.5 years now. It's been a fun journey.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. I want you to do the ending. Do you know my outro by this point? I want to see if you could do it.
Peace out, everybody.
Thank you for tuning into Channel BK.
Peace out.
There we go.